the bioidentical signal from the device that's causing this structuring? Is it electromagnetic or auditory, or what causes that change?
It's actually electromagnetic, and it's a specific wavelength in the electromagnetic spectrum. It's where it sits is at the very high end of the near-infrared spectrum. And so that, if you think about infrared technologies like lasers or pulse EMF and so on, those technologies are typically 600 to 800 nanometers, maybe a little bit more. Our device is up above 1200 nanometers. And what we're doing will not go through the skin. It has to go through the water. So that's our delivery is through a humidified airstream. And so it is, in some senses, it's sort of this kind of indirectly near infrared technology, but it's outside of the range where most of us think of being infrared.
Okay, that makes sense. So basically, the only way the body can intake it is it's entering through the lungs because it's in that humidified water?
Yes, and so the way it gets in is through the mucous membrane. It has to touch the watery surfaces in the body. So when you inhale it through, the nose or into the lungs, then all of that is that connection to the water, which is essential for what we do.
Okay, because I know I've gotten to try the device before and even have ordered one now to have in my home. And it's basically like a super simple device that I'm going to keep by my computer and just have it on. And it's not for a lot of time, right? There's different levels, but it's not a huge time commitment, especially because you can do it while you're doing something else.
Exactly. And that's very common both in clinical settings or at home where people are, combining it with different things.
So why do you think, I know there's so many different health approaches out there right now and different devices. Why do you think this is the way to go? Why do you think this is such an important technology?
This technology has absolutely no potential for harm. The way it works is just to support the body. If the body didn't need that, well, we wouldn't be aging if the body didn't need some help. But if it didn't need that, it would simply be ignored. And the key here is that it's biophysics, not biochemistry. And so we're not adding a pharmaceutical or a supplement or something that could be too much for the body. We are just using a biophysical approach to support the body. And that is a really kind of a special technology that has so much potential for benefit without the potential for harm.
That's so fascinating. Have you guys done any clinical work or clinical studies around this to kind of see what the data does?
Yes, we've done research on the technology itself, which is part of that whole product process. And then on human beings and how they respond. We don't look at disease states. We're a class 1 medical device, so we're not studying a specific disease. We're studying the aspects that underlie our health in general. So there are things like DNA damage, oxidative stress, immune response, inflammatory markers, things that represent health but are not specific diseases.
That makes sense. But those are also all measurable, correct? There's metrics that you can track for those?
Yes, absolutely. And we have them done with double-blind, placebo-controlled university research looking at those differences. So it has to be very verifiable.
I love that. I knew that you came from a very well-researched background, and I love that you guys have done, because I know that's an expensive and lengthy process to do. I love that you guys have done that due diligence, and it's so rare. I feel like even in the more naturally minded health world, to find something that doesn't have any potential for harm and that also has double-blind clinical studies. That's a gold standard that you don't see very often. And I'm curious, what kind of people are you seeing currently use the NanoVi technology? Where is it being most implemented so far?
Well, we have 3 areas. The first one, and the one that was most used when we first released the product, was for chronic illness. All chronic illness is related to oxidative damage. And so that was the biggest area in centers by individuals at home and also in centers or clinics. The next area is one that we love, and you also, I think, really appreciate, is the wellness and healthy aging, where people are trying to maintain their health, not recover it after there's already been a lot of damage. And so that's been a really big growing area for us. And also the one that's growing quickly right now is sports and performance, and really the whole spectrum from weekend warriors to high-end professional athletes using the device to recover faster, maintain their health, because athletes, especially endurance athletes, are, there's a lot of oxidative damage. So they want to make sure that they're repairing it and staying as healthy as they can. So those are the three big areas for us. We see it combined in wellness centers. It really combines well with hyperbarics or cryotherapy. It's used in performance centers, sometimes in conjunction with other recovery devices. It's used in weight loss centers or in the workplace for companies that are trying to maintain the health of their employees.
That makes sense. And you just actually touched on one of my next questions, which was, because we know, for instance, with especially endurance athletes, they are creating all the extra oxidative stress by its nature. I know people love to do that, and I have only respect for people who can, but it is very stressful on the body. And I know also personal friends who are using hyperbaric oxygen to help work through several different conditions. And that was going to be my question is, we know that hyperbaric, for instance, increases the oxygen in the cells in the blood, but it can also increase the reactive oxygen species. So that makes sense to me that you would pair these together basically. So someone after hyperbaric would do this.
It's really taken off with hyperbaric centers, the adoption of it, because they can compare the results with and without. And the two of them combine really nicely, that repair aspect, but also, because of the way it works too, our device improves mitochondrial function. It improves the utilization of oxygen. They can get a bigger kick from a hyperbaric center. So they get better results and they have that reduction in oxidative damage.
That is really fascinating. It makes total sense though. And I know that's a growing area as well, hyperbaric. So I love that those are being paired. And I think, I've said this before, I'm curious your take that, unfortunately, I feel like our everybody alive right now, we have to face a lot more potential damage than potentially previous generations did. Like I look back to my grandparents or great grandparents, and their diets were just naturally more nutrient dense because the soil was more nutrient dense, and they typically had less stress and they dealt with less obesity, and they have all these different factors in their favor. Whereas I feel like now we're kind of operating at a time where we do have to be a little more proactive about our health just to maintain, like you said, keep a health, a baseline and not encounter disease just because we're constantly bombarded with so much more. But have you seen that as well, either personally or in research?
I absolutely agree with that. I guess starting with personally, it's just very clear to me that that's the case. And it's fine to say, eat really good food, but it's another matter to find the soils and all of that, that produces that food that's actually as nutrient dense as it was 100 years ago. It's really, much more challenging. And then scientifically, I think I'd have to say that that's not really my area to kind of look into it, but I think there's huge evidence of it, including our national agencies. So to me, that seems rather indisputable.
Yeah, I agree, unfortunately. And that's my passion and how I got into this is just realizing kind of what an uphill battle our children are going to face and trying to, like you mentioned before, give them the best start where they don't have to come back from chronic disease. They can hopefully not have it in the first place. Another question I've been meaning to ask you is, so with the name NanoVi, where did the name come from? And does that indicate that there's like a nanotechnology aspect of this?
It is. It is a made up name, but the nano aspect of it, yeah, this is happening. It's biophysics. It's happening at a very, very, very small scale. And so that's kind of at the heart of it. V has a lot of different meanings, from, vibration to vitality and so on.
Got it. And so I know a lot of people listening, just based on reader surveys, I know that quite a few people are either practitioners, chiropractors, or married to doctors or chiropractors, or people who may be interested in actually getting the device. I'd love to talk a little bit more about where they can actually find it, how they can get it, and the cost involved, just because I like to be super upfront about all those things. So if you don't mind tackling that.
No, I don't mind at all. And I love it when practitioners get it. We have a great number of home users as well. But when practitioners get a device and make it available to multiple people, it becomes a very effective and cost-effective device. So it's ideal. Of course, if we could all afford one in our own home, that would be great too. So on the side of the cost for practitioners, there's really two professional devices. One of them is a 15-minute device and the other is half an hour. So it depends on the context in a center, what fits in best. And then there's also a home device, which is an hour-long session time, not really used professionally, but if it fits into somebody's schedule at home, that could be a good way to go. So starting with that device, the price is a little over $5,000. The medium device, which is a half-hour session time, is over $8,000. And the high-end device, which is a 15-minute session time, is a little more than $13,000, closer to $14,000. So that's sort of the price range of the devices. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, multiple people share them in a family or in a wellness center so that they can be really quite cost effective. There's no ongoing cost to operation, but we love to see them in shared environments because then you can leverage it across many people.
For sure. I mean, as you're saying that, I'm thinking like massage places that'd be awesome to have while you're getting a massage, or co-working spaces. There's so many ways where they could be shared. Even if the cost is prohibitive for one person, they could be kind of shared amongst a group and a lot of people could benefit.
Yeah. And you're kind of hitting on something that I have a personal interest in, which is community health. You know, that we kind of do things together and help advance the whole community.
I'm going to come back to that in just a second because that's a huge passion point for me as well. Can you also just explain really quickly why they have different amounts of time?
It's really just the output of the device, how powerful they are. That's really the biggest, that's the big factor, so that you get more of a kick from the most powerful device and therefore need less time on it. That said, many people spend more time on the more powerful device. So it's not that's all you can do in a day. It's just that those are the equivalent times.
Okay, so basically an hour on the lower device would be the equivalent to 15 minutes on the higher device, but there wouldn't be any maximum dose since it's completely safe, right?
Right. So you have the most powerful device and you could use it maybe twice a day for 20 minutes. I tend to use it more because I have one in my office, and you might be the same way. If it's by your desk, you just use it. There's no reason not to use it almost if it's handy. And I put it on typically once in the morning and once in the afternoon, but the session times will almost always be much more than 15 minutes.
Okay, that's a great tip. So back to the community, because this has been my current passion of research recently, just because I ran across studies and statistics that said literally having a strong and healthy community is more important than exercise. It's more important than quitting smoking as far as longevity and long-term health markers. So like the data shows, we know that we need other people. We need strong relationships with other people. And obviously we also want these other people that we love to be healthy and live a long time. But I'd love to hear your take on it and what you see and what you personally believe as far as community.
Well, I completely agree with you in community in general, and I have also been reading and seeing that research and looking at just how powerful that is. But when I think of the community health, I'm being a little bit more economic, I think, which is that if we share devices and we share knowledge, we can advance everybody in the group so much more than if everybody has their own silo and they're buying their own goods and so on. And so I'm really thinking of it. To me, it's the only way to make preventative health widely available is to share it. And I'm very sensitive to economic issues. I know our device is expensive, but I'm always looking for ways that engage every level rather than just